This is the issue, and I am the ghetto man. Today's issue, a message to the 45th, a message to President Trump. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Make America great again. What does that mean to me? Well, the United States is broken. And how can we fix it? Well, for starters, how about obeying the law? How about running our country pursuant to the United States Constitution? The system isn't working. Why? Because we are not working the system. It's as simple as that. So this is my message to the 45th, to President Trump. If you want to make America great again, then start by obeying the law. The executive branch of government is the branch of government that executes the law. And if you're going to execute the law, well, the first thing you have to understand is what the law is. Now, as I speak, the supreme law of the land is the United States Constitution. And it's being totally ignored. No one in any branch of the government is obeying the United States Constitution. No one in government even cares about the United States Constitution anymore. In fact, the so-called government running this country, in my opinion, is illegitimate. We don't have a working constitutional government. We don't have a nation of law. What we have is a nation of men and women who impose their unconstitutional will upon the American people, we the people. What we have in the United States of America today is an oligarchy, a small group. When I say small group, I'm talking about the 525 people in Congress and then those who are in head of all the various different offices in the government. Compared to the 320 million people, they are a small group of people. And this small group of people has complete control over the entire country. I call this oligarchy the Demo-Republic-Nazi Party. One party, two names, that's controlled by the international banking cartels and the corporations that surround them. Today, every branch of government is irreversibly corrupt. There's nothing that takes place in our country that remotely relates to the government as set forth by our nation's founding fathers. Nothing. It is my position that because of the corruption and because we don't obey the United States Constitution, we have no United States government at all. What you see around us, what you see imposing a law and acting like they're the authority, what you see is an imposter government. Now, with that said, how do we go about making America great again? How do we make America the land of the free and the home of the brave again, instead of what we become, the land of the fee and the home of the slave? Like most people that I know, I voted for Trump. I voted for Trump. Now, I didn't vote for him because I thought that he would do the job as mandated by the United States Constitution, but because there is no way on God's green earth that I was going to let an anti-American, anti-Constitution, racist, eugenicist, white supremacist, communist, dictator, bigot, traitor like Hillary Rodham Clinton to occupy the office of president. She is, by far, the most disgusting piece of evil human trash in the history of this country. It wasn't going to happen. Wasn't going to let her in. What's sad about that is no one should have to cast a vote in this country for that reason. No one. Okay. So if we're going to make America great again, what should we expect from President Trump? For starters, how about all these unconstitutional wars? The only way that the president can act as commander-in-chief of the armed forces is when Congress has formally declared war against a nation, and it's done pursuant to Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, which, if I remember correctly, hasn't been done since World War II. Every war that the United States has been involved in since World War II has been and is today unconstitutional. You see, without a formal declaration of war by an act of Congress, the president has no lawful authority to prosecute any aggression against any nation on the planet. Period. End of story. Now, of course, if we're attacked, this country is attacked, the president has the authority to engage the enemy without an act of Congress, but only then. There has to be an attack. You can't just say, I think they're going to attack us, and then preemptively attack. There has to be an attack on USA or USA soil. And that includes, all the U.S. territories as well as the United States itself. Okay. Since there has not been a formal declaration of war by an act of Congress for any of the wars that the United States has and is engaged in, what should the president do? Well, if President Trump really wants to make America great again, he should refuse to take any military action against any of the countries that we are now unlawfully involved with until Congress has formally declared war against these countries. That's the law. Until Congress does this, President Trump must bring our troops home. The president must force Congress to act pursuant to Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. By law, this is the president's only choice. Period. That's his only choice. Now, if we remember, that was what the Obama Nazi promised to do when he was campaigning for president. Remember? And I quote, if I'm elected president, the first thing I'm going to do is end these wars and bring the troops home. Remember him saying that? That was the first thing he was going to do. And if I remember, he also stated he was going to close Guantanamo Bay as well. Just another unconstitutional blunder. Now, because of the separation of powers, or the separation of power between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government, the president, if he operates pursuant to the law, has no choice, has absolutely no choice other than to bring the troops home. Until Congress acts pursuant to the law, the president's hands are tied, legally tied. He can't decide he's just going to go ahead and do it because he thinks it's the right thing to do. Our founding fathers didn't want an emperor or a dictator or a king. That's why the president was never given the authority to declare war. The president, by not acting, unless there's been a formal declaration of war by an act of Congress, lays the responsibility where it belongs, on Congress. I realize that would really shake things up, and it should, because it's time that we start obeying the law, obeying the Constitution. Remember, we are a constitutional republic, and we are in what they call a constitutional crisis right now, this very minute. That would be the first thing that I would ask the president to do or want him to do pursuant to the law. The next thing that the president must go after is the privately owned Federal Reserve Central Bank in this country. Why? Because it is blatantly unconstitutional. Once again, Congress is the only branch of government that is authorized to create, to coin. In fact, that's the word they use, to create, to coin money, to create money, create coined money. And if we read Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, the Constitution says to Congress to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and set the foreign coin and fix the standards of weights and measurements, which is what we did. We did that under the Coinage Act of 1792 and 1900. We set the standards and weights and measurement. We went to a Spanish weights and measurement where we used the measurement of a dollar. The dollar is not a term like a thing. It's an increment of measurement, like a pound or an ounce. That's an increment of measurement. You couldn't have a bread pound. You'd have a pound of bread. And if you had a coin that weighed $1, then that coin would weigh 412.5 grains of standard silver, and that would be a dollar weight. I have a dollar's weight in silver. Okay, that's what they mean by, to fix the standard of weights and measurements. Now, I don't know why they went with the Spanish mill dollar. They could have did something else that was a little easier for people to understand, because people don't know what a dollar is. They think it's a thing. They don't understand it's an increment of measurement. Now, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 6, it says to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities or current coin of the United States. See, we're not even allowed to have paper money, just coin. And, of course, that coin's got to be made out of a specific substance. Now we move to Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, and it says no state shall coin money. Why? Because Congress is the only one that has the power to coin money. So Congress creates the money, sets the standards and weights and measurements, and then that money is issued to the states, where we, the people, use it to exchange for goods and services. We use this substance, this property. We convert one piece of property into gold and silver. In this case, the unit accountability of the United States is expressed in silver coin. And it said, like I said, Article 1, Section 10 says no state shall coin money. So the United States government coins the money into the Treasury, and then we, the people, use it. And the states aren't allowed to coin money. They're not allowed to create their own coin. And it says coin, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver coin a tender and payment of debts. So just want you to understand that. And you can find that in the Coinage Act of 1792 and 1900, and of course Article 1, Section 8, and Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. Now Congress, under the mandates of the United States Constitution, cannot delegate its money-making authority over to a private corporation. It can't delegate it over to anybody. It's something that has to be done. Congress sets the standards and weights and measurements, and then the Treasury is the one that implements making the coin. Okay, and if to do it any other way, if to delegate the authority over to any other agency, would be unconstitutional, and it would be against the law. Nowhere in the law does Congress have the power to grant its money-making power over to this Federal Reserve Central Bank. It's a private corporation. It isn't even a branch of the government. Once again, we use that word as kind of a quasi-fourth branch of government. Well, the Constitution didn't make any provisions for a fourth branch of government. But Congress, unconstitutionally, by creating the Federal Reserve Act, has allowed the money-making authority that is granted to Congress only. They delegated it over to not only to a branch of government, but to a private corporation. It's completely nuts. The authority to create, when I say create, that's coin money, to create money, to coin money, is the Treasury's responsibility. Today, the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury both counterfeit our money. And counterfeiting our money, under the law, is punishable by death. All right, let me go ahead and grab Black Law's dictionary here for a second. And what we're going to do is I'm going to turn to the definition of counterfeiting. And see if I can find my specs here. These little eyes don't see up close like they used to. Anyway, let's see what we got here. I've got the wrong page is what I've got. Okay, counterfeit. All right, let's see what it says. To forge, to copy, or imitate without authority or right, and when a view to deceive or defraud by passing the copy or thing forged for that which is original and genuine, the most commonly applied to fraudulent and criminal imitation of money or securities. All right, with the intent to deceive. That's interesting. Because the coins we have today, they aren't made out of silver. They are made out of nickel and copper. Most of them, I mean the $quarter. But anyway, let me just go ahead and show you. I've laid out some coins here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera on them. Let me kind of straighten up the mat there a little bit. But what you see before you is 6 coins. You see what we call the silver dollar, but actually what it is a coin that weighs $1. You see the $half, the $quarter, and a tenth of a dollar. We always remember these, the dollar, the $half, 50 cents, quarter, 25 cents, and 10 cents. Okay, you'll notice this is what we call the unit accountability of the United States. This is the current coin of the United States. This is what we should all be having in our pocket, and this is what was considered lawful money of the United States. Now, our founding fathers were pretty clever because when they designed the coin, you'll notice that it has raised surfaces on either side. I'll flip this coin weighing $1 over here, and you'll see it's got raised surface on it. And you notice that the edge itself has a serration on it right here. Well, the reason why it has a raised surface on both sides and a serrated edge is because people would clip coins. The coin would come through, and what they'd do is they'd shave off a little bit of that silver, and if you got enough coins passing through, you could shave off $1's weight in silver, and you could rob somebody. So the coins were put with serrated edges. You'll notice it's only on the 4 coins, the dollar, $half, quarter, and a dime, because they were made out of silver, and they were made out of what they call standard silver, which has got a 10% copper alloy, so that the coins would wear through handling. Silver is very malleable, and it'll wear off very easily in your hand. It's soft, it's malleable, and so they wanted to make sure that when the current coin was in the hands of the people, that you could at least see that it was issued by a competent authority, the United States Treasury, and then you could see whether or not anybody's tampered with it. Okay? The only coins that didn't have that serrated edge was the nickel and the penny, because they were considered token coins, meaning that they weren't made of silver, they weren't made of gold, they were just made of cheaper metals. And no one was going to clip those coins. If I remember correctly, we're going to do a video on money, and I'm going to have to do it in series, because this is a very complex issue only because it's been made complex. It's actually very simple, but now that they've screwed it all up, the government screwed it all up, it takes a while to kind of deprogramize people, bring them out of the matrix as to what money really is, because people have no clue what money really is. So I think the law stated basically you after $10 you could demand your payment in the lawful money of the United States, the silver coin. Now it's kind of interesting because when you issue coin, actual substance, and it's actually convertible. The coin is convertible to any type of property you want. You can buy real estate, you convert it to coin, you can turn back and convert it back into real estate again. But the interesting thing is that our founding fathers made sure that the entire wealth of the nation, always remained in the hands of we the people. We had the coin, it was in our hands, and the wealth of the nation remained here. And if these servants of government wanted to tax us or they wanted to get some money out of us, they had to come to us. Instead, today, they go to a private bank and they borrow money that's created out of thin air, plus interest, and they do it in we the people's name, and we owe the money back to this corporation and this bank. And see, if the money was issued to the people, we'd have control of our money everywhere we go every day. And if you decided to stick a little bit under your pillow, no one knew the difference. It would, as it sat there, it would still retain its value. Today, this coin weighing $1, people refer to as a silver dollar, still buys the same goods and services, the same amount of goods and services it did the day it was minted. And this one was minted in 1922. I can still go out and buy the same amount of groceries, the same amount of whatever that they did in 1922 because this coin has retained that value. And the fact that you'd have to purchase, pay, 15, 16 Federal Reserve notes for this shows you that the paper money has been devalued, 16 times this. But they still try to tell you and tax you on the full face value what's on the note. I just thought that I'd bring that to your attention. And let's take a look at some of the notes real quick. Let me put the camera back over there. I'll turn it back over. Let's just kind of spin this around here. And, the coins, the current coin that we have today is counterfeited because it's not made of silver. It's funny because they sit here and what do? They take and make the coin look like it's silver. See, they put a nickel coating on it. It looks like it's silver, but it's actually a copper coin with a nickel coating, which looks like it's silver to people who don't know what silver looks like. And what it is intent to deceive. This is not a coin that is made out of 90% silver, standard silver, as is opposed to under the coinage act of 1792 and 1900. It's counterfeit. It's fake. It costs the government less than a penny to make it, or maybe a little more than a penny to make it. And then you have to work 25 cents for it. And it's even worse when they convert it to paper because they put bigger numbers on it, and it's still only worse the paper it's printed on because it doesn't have any value. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. It's not the current coin. And even the penny, for crying out loud, was made of copper. It's not made of copper anymore. It's zinc with a copper coating. I mean, they even counterfeit the Treasury counterfeits the token coins. Okay, now let's take a look at a couple of the banknotes here. What I have in front of us is a 1934 series Federal Reserve note. See up here at the top it says Federal Reserve note. Okay, Federal Reserve note. And then down here, which that doesn't appear on the bills anymore, it says we'll pay to the bearer on demand, and then the amount, $20. 20 of these things. Okay? And even up here in the left corner, you'll see there's a little contract there. It says this note is legal tender for all debts public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. Redeemable in lawful money. Will pay to the bearer on demand $20. And it's issued not from the United States Treasury, but from the Federal Reserve Bank, Federal Reserve note up here. Okay? And the word tender says this note is legal tender. The word tender just means to offer. It's legal to offer this for all debts, public and private. Now, this note, if we take a look at Black's Law Dictionary, and let me grab the dictionary real quick. I'm actually going to cover more of this when it comes to, we're going to go through all the money, and I'm going to do the best I can. I'm not a complete expert on this, but I have studied it over the last 45 years, and I think I can present it to you in such a way that you'll understand it. Well, let's take a look at the Black's Law Dictionary, the definition of a note. And as we said, that it's a Federal Reserve note. It was issued by the United States Treasury. On top of the note, it would say United States note. but it's a note. So what is the legal definition of a note? Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Okay, I need my glasses. I can't look at it without my glasses. Apologize for this. That's what happens when you're a one-man outfit and you're trying to put out a show that has some good information. Okay, a note is an instrument containing an express and absolute promise of signer, i.e. the maker, to pay a specified person or order or bearer a definite sum of money at a specific time. Okay, so there's four things you have that to make up a legal note. It has to have an express promise or an absolute promise of the signer to pay a specified person or order or bearer a specific sum of money at a specific time. So let's take a look at this note again, just for real quickly here. Okay, take a look at it. All right, on the note, does it have a signer? Yes, it does. It has the Federal Reserve Bank, the United States Treasury. Okay, the Federal Reserve Bank would be the signer. It says that it will pay to a certain person or order bearer. It says we'll pay to the bearer, the one holding it. And when is it paid? On demand. As soon as you go to the bank or to the Treasury or the Federal Reserve Bank or any bank, you hand it to them. You say, I'm the bearer, and I demand that you pay me $20. Okay, $20. So you would never confuse this note with one of these. Now, would you? There's no way that you could say that this note is $20. No, it's a note. It's a bill owed to you that you collect on demand. 20 of these. Try it sometime. It doesn't work anymore. And you'll notice the contract on this is a 1934 series, and you'll notice that the contract on it is very very legible. I think you can practically read it even with this little camera. Now let's take a look at the 1950 series Federal Reserve note again. Still says Federal Reserve note on top of here. It even has a contract, same contract, but look at now what they've done. They shrunk it. See, now you need a magnifying glass to read it, but you see in 1934 you can read it very clearly. Now it's a little smaller. Isn't that something? Then it still has on there, will pay to the bearer of the man, $20. So we have no problem there. We still know that this is a legal note because it meets the four basic requirements that you have to have in a legal note. If you don't have the four basic requirements, then it's fraud. Okay, here's a $10, what series is this? It's another 1950 series, and you'll notice, once again, the contract is there. Federal Reserve note, United States of America, will pay to the bearer, when holding it, on demand, when they ask for it, $10. This is not $10. This is a note for $10. Okay, then they had another certificate out issued by the Treasury, and it was called a silver certificate. Some of us that are my age, that are in their 60s, we remember these things. Okay, and if you read on this particular note, it says that it's a silver certificate up here. And then it says there is on deposit, certified that there is on deposit at the United States Treasury in the United States of America, $1, coin weighing $1. And it says right down here, it says, will pay to the bearer on demand. See, meets the requirement. You know that this is not $1. It's $1. It's not $1. It is a note for $1. Okay? It's very simple if you understand how notes work. Okay, here's even a $2. This one is actually a United States note. It was issued by the United States. See up here, it doesn't say Federal Reserve note. It says United States note. But you'll notice here that they just says this note is legal tender, legal to offer for all debts, public and private. But it still says the United States of America will pay to the bearer on demand $2. So you know that this is not $1. It's $2. It's a note for $2. And when you see the red seal, you know that came from this one here. That came from the United States Treasury. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you a $5 Treasury note, United States note. And this one was issued in 1963. And this was issued after President Kennedy, by executive order, took the power to issue the notes away from the Federal Reserve and went back to the United States Treasury. But this is when you see the real big change. You'll see that the note no longer has a contract on it that says that this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable lawful money at the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve Bank. That's been removed. What you see there says that this note is legal tender, legal to offer for all debts, public and private. But you'll notice that it no longer says we'll pay to the bearer on demand $5. It's a note says it's a note, but then it tries to claim that it's also the thing. So it's either a note or it's a thing, but it can't be both. Now, can it? And right here, this issued by the United States Treasury, this note is a fraudulent note. It doesn't meet the basic requirement of a note that we just read in Black's Law Dictionary, now does it? It is something else. So what Kennedy did is he took the power of the Federal Reserve Bank away from them, and then he turned it over to the Treasury, but he created a fiat currency, a currency that was no longer going to be redeemable in lawful money, which is only allowed under Article 1, Section 8 and 10 of the United States Constitution, right? Okay. Now, what's interesting is that Kennedy gets his head blown off after Kennedy gets his head blown off after he issues this. He takes away the power from the Federal Reserve, and then when Johnson gets in the power, what happens? It goes right back to the Federal Reserve. But this time, when it goes back to the Federal Reserve, and I don't know if I have one handy here, is when it went back to the Federal Reserve, the note, just like this $5 note, and I had one handy here, but let me see if I can reach it. Just give me a second. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me lay that one down. It goes back to the Federal Reserve as a Federal Reserve note. United States of America no longer will pay the bearer on demand. No longer the contract that says this note is legal tender, legal offer, all debts public and private. But it too, now issued from the Federal Reserve, is not redeemable in that. It's not redeemable in that. Okay? It's now trying to claim that it is a note, and it's trying to claim that it is a dollar. And we all know that the dollar is an increment of measurement and weight. This coin weighs $1 in standard silver. But this coin is not a dollar any more than you have a pound of bread, but you can't have a bread pound. Okay, you follow me on that? So what I'm trying to show you here is that this is the reason that we have to get rid of the Federal Reserve, because what the Federal Reserve has done is it has taken over our entire monetary system. And we don't have money that has any value at all. In fact, all this money is, and it's not money anyway. The Ninth Circuit said that Federal Reserve notes are not money. They circulate as money, but they aren't money. What they are, and Ron Paul has been pointing this out for many, many years, but I don't think he's really explained it as clearly as he should. And what we're dealing with is we've monetized debt. Okay? So what we have is we have a note. This note was borrowed from the Federal Reserve plus interest. Okay? And we take and we use this note to buy things. We bond out here and we exchange things. But see, until the debt, even though it's fraudulent, until the debt is paid back, this note's paid back to the dollars, the so-called dollar that doesn't exist is paid back to the Federal Reserve. Until this is paid back, the Federal Reserve still owns everything that you purchased it with. And until the debt's paid off, national debt, which we shouldn't have to pay because the national debt was acquired through fraud by the Federal Reserve and those people who were involved in the legislation to create the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, because the Federal Reserve Act is clearly unconstitutional, and there's no argument that it's unconstitutional. I mean, people will say, well, the courts have ruled this way or the courts have ruled that way. But like we said before, the courts aren't the final word in the matter. They can't go and change the law. They can't go and interpret it and make a change. If the court has to interpret any law, then the law needs to be sent back and redone because it's void for vagueness. If nobody can understand it and it takes a court to interpret it, then it's void. Nobody has to follow a law that nobody understands. So because the Federal Reserve Act is clearly unconstitutional and the president is the chief executive officer, it is his responsibility to enforce the mandates of Article 1, Section 8 and 10 of the United States Constitution and arrest everyone involved in the Federal Reserve for criminal fraud, the counterfeiting of U.S. currency, and to seize all of the Federal Reserve's assets globally, seize them all. Then indict and arrest, prosecute, try and convict, and sentence all of these traitors and return to a constitutional sound money where the wealth of the nation remains in our hands. Our hands. And nobody can get it out of the sovereign's hands until they follow the Constitution and they tax us correctly. And we're going to get into taxation and how it's supposed to be under the Constitution. And we're going to get into that probably when we get into discussing money in detail. I just wanted to cover a little bit there for you so you'd understand a little bit where I'm going with this and why the president must, as he should for the military, pull all the troops back. He must do something about this fraud that's been committed on the American people through the international banking cartels and through the Federal Reserve Act and through those traitorous members of Congress who ran it through. Now, the monies that we recover from the assets seized from the Federal Reserve would be repatriated to we the people. And it would be done through the Treasury by way of I guess you could call it a currency lawful coin exchange, okay? So many Federal Reserve notes in exchange for the silver coin. Now, there was an argument, people will tell you all the time, oh, well, there's enough silver to go around. It's just bullshit. I'm so sick and tired of listening to these leftist, communist assholes that want to come out here and tell everybody, that, we don't need money, that's an archaic thing. Baloney. You put the control of the money in the hands of a central bank, and if you issue fiat currency that has no value, and they can just keep pumping it into the system, what you're going to do is you're going to do like all fiat currencies, it's going to finally collapse. And if you say there's not enough silver to go around to make coins for the people, that's bullshit, because what we're dealing with is a commodity. If there's some sort of rarity that they can't mine enough silver to make the coin, then the silver that's in circulation is going to go up in value, which means that prices are what? They're going to go down. They're going to drop. You'd have deflation with a sound currency. You would never have inflation. It's all a con game. We have been lied to since the day we were born. So anyway, I honestly think that, and I'm sure we'd have to work out the details with this, but I'm just trying to show you that this is what the president needs to do. He needs to force Congress to declare wars on these countries so that he can act accordingly as commander-in-chief during the time of war. And we need to have a sound monetary system. If we don't have a sound monetary system, it doesn't matter what you change in this country. As long as the Federal Reserve exists and as long as they're issuing fiat currency and they have control over our entire monetary system, there's never any way that we're ever going to be free. You can't be free. The borrower, our nation, borrowing from the Federal Reserve, is always servant to the lender. It's slavery. It's debt slavery. So the 14th Amendment maybe freed everybody that was in bondage in this country at the time. But when you take a look at it in 1913, the entire country now is under bondage and in total slavery to the Federal Reserve Bank. And the president, being the executive officer, has the power to enforce the Constitution, the laws. And I believe everybody that was involved in it, anybody that even opposes going back to a constitutional money, should be tried for treason. Okay, based on the law, and I'm talking about the United States Constitution, if the president were to force Congress to obey the Constitution, in these two areas alone, we would see an immediate change in our country and the economy. I believe it was George Washington that said, after the collapse of the continental currency, which was nothing more than a fiat currency like we're using today, when they drew up the Constitution and went to a hard currency where the wealth of the nation was in the hands of the people, 1 year, and the economy was just flourishing. As soon as they got rid of and got the banks out of it and got back to a using quid pro quo, substance for substance. It was amazing how quickly things change. And with this, I'm going to do a little side issue here. I remember I lived in Southern California, just off of the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And for years, they dumped raw sewage out into the ocean very close to shore. And what ended up happening is that the sea urchin population went crazy. What the sea urchins used to feed on was the rooting mechanism of the kelp. See, kelp is an algae, so it's not really a root, but it attaches itself to rocks and stuff, and that, well, it attaches itself looks like a root. Well, the sea anemones, they'd come along and they'd eat that mechanism, and the kelp would just float away. And it got to the point where there was absolutely no kelp, and we're talking about something that it grows like 100 foot long, and it grows as fast, much as a foot a day. And the environmentalists, think, Palos Verdes Peninsula, all the fish left. There was nothing out there. It was a virtual desert just covered with sea urchins. It was great for the sea urchin divers who were, collecting it for the roe, the eggs in there for some sort of food that people eat. But it was a disaster. So what they did, instead of getting rid of the raw sewage, they just put the pipe out in deeper water. But that alone, getting it away from the coastline itself, the entire area was able to recover. Now, the environmentalists, they screamed and hollered and said, "Oh, we're talking about devastation here. Oh, God, it's a disaster. It's going to take 100 years for the area to recover from the damage of the sewage." Well, you know how long it actually took to recover? 1 year. 1 year. A year later, after they moved the pipe out to deeper water, the kelp was back, the fish was back, the entire thing was back. And that's exactly what would happen if we went to a constitutionally sound money. Everything would return. People would be able to retain their value. You wouldn't lose the value of your money while it sat in a bank account or in a piggy bank or whatever. Right now, let me give you a quick example, and then I'm going to move on and get this thing wrapped up. Let me just give you a quick example. Let's say I have 100 silver dollars, 100 of these coins weighing $1, okay? And I stick them in a jar, okay? Okay, another guy has 100 of these, and he sticks them in a jar. Better yet, we don't even stick the coins in a jar. We bury them in the ground with nothing. Just dig a hole, put them in the ground, bury them. Well, we put the money in a jar, and then we bury that jar in the ground. 100 Federal Reserve notes and 100 of these. Lawful money, coins weighing $1. Now we wait, and we do this in 1969, and we wait till 2017, and I think, oh, man, I need money. And the other guy says, yeah, I need money too. So what we do is we dig up our thing. I dig up my 100 coins weighing $1. And guess what? Today, I can convert them back into these stupid pieces of paper, Federal Reserve notes, and I would be able to convert them back. It's basically 15 to 1, 16 to 1, somewhere in that area right now, okay? All right? But the person who had the Federal Reserve notes wouldn't be able to convert them to anything. He's stuck with these. And do you think 100 of these, which will be equivalent to 1,500 of these, isn't a better retention of wealth? And that's exactly what we've got here. You use this coin, and you will retain your wealth. It may not go up in value, unless, of course, it becomes rare and there's not as many to pass around, so there's less of them to pass between people's hands. Then you're going to see prices drop because then they're going to go up in value. It's very simple stuff. But we're not taught this at all. Why? Because we've been practicing the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto, which is free education in public schools. And what have they been teaching us? They've been teaching us communism. Okay, without a constitutionally sound monetary system, no one's life, liberty, and property is safe from government and the privately owned central bank through its wealth compensation through inflation. Nobody's safe. You would be safe if you had these in your pocket. And people say, well, they're awfully heavy. Well, you don't have to carry that many because they buy a lot more. The reason that our country is falling apart is because we, the people, have no idea how our Constitution works. We don't. I talk to people all the time. In fact, I think one of the hardest things about listening to these programs for people is that these programs are going to make you think. You have a guy sitting over here, calls himself the ghetto man, and he's putting together these shows, and he's telling you things that you've never heard before because they were deliberately, deliberately removed from the school curriculum. They don't want you to know how this works. They want you to know how this communist, fascist, socialist system that they've been bringing in since 1954, they want that. They want you to know that. They want you to think that that was the way this country was founded on. Now they want you to believe that all the people who founded this country were just a bunch of rich, greedy slave owners, and it's all a goddamn lie. Now, the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto, as I said, free education in public schools, and, of course, the lying, corporate-controlled, lamestream media and its prostitutes. This is why the American people are so ignorant. They're not stupid. They're just ignorant. They've been taught something that isn't true, a lie. Now, how do we change this? Well, one, the thing that you hate the most, you're going to have to become responsible, because we the people that this government is supposed to serve, to turn around and kiss our asses, we the people are responsible. We're responsible for the actions of our serving government. And we're responsible for our own education. We're responsible for everything that goes on in this country. We the people created the United States government. It is not the other way around. And I know that's hard for anybody to grasp nowadays. And when our public servants fail to do their job, uphold and defend the Constitution, follow all the rules and everything that was set down in the Constitution, it is up to us, up to we the people, to correct the problem. And you can't correct the problem unless you know what the problem is and you actually know how to solve it. If our public servants usurp powers that are not authorized by the U.S. Constitution, it is a duty of all sovereign citizens, and I know they'll try to make you sound like that's a bad word too, but you got to remember, we the people, we created it. This is our gig, man. This is our gig. And as the sovereign citizens, it is our duty to take the appropriate action to gain control of this criminal government. We the people created the states. We the people created the United States. And what has happened is that the creation has become greater than that which who created it. And that's what's happening right now. The creation now thinks that it's greater than we the people. So if President Trump's goal is to make America great again, then we better start seeing some heads roll. And I'm talking about real heads roll. Now, I have been watching President Trump, and the one thing that I have noticed, and I'm speculating here, and I really am speculating, and I guess maybe a little hopeful too, is that President Trump has been uncovering major pedophile rings. And I mean, we're talking global. I mean, major pedophile rings. And he's been arresting those who are involved in freeing these children from this horrible human trafficking ring that's going on globally. Well, you know, when I saw him do that, I said to myself, well, who knows? Perhaps these pedophile rings will be found in the highest offices of our government. And you know something? I really suspect that they will. And perhaps by rounding up the pedophiles, that in itself will drain the swamp. Because I personally suspect that the majority of Congress is involved in some sort of perverted, unconstitutional scheme of corruption. Do you have eyes to see and ears to hear? If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. I am the Ghetto Man. Thanks for watching. And please subscribe to our channel and please share.